Today we are installing this custom LED board inside of this Veloster taillight. As you can see, we have already knocked out this one side right here, and I'm sorry that we have already done this off camera. This customer ordered a while ago, so we were really trying to hurry up. So all I can show you is us installing it. I'll have a link down there for another taillight build that's very similar, so you can see how to build the actual LED boards. I still think that this will be an interesting video because of the diffuser in here. The diffused builds are always a little bit confusing. First thing we're gonna do is go over the tools that we're gonna need. One of the most obvious things that we are gonna need is a set of OEM Veloster taillights. We're gonna need a Veloster LED kit from Aesthetic. Look at how insane this curve is. That's wild. Soldering iron to solder all of those LEDs and to solder them directly to the taillight harness. Ultrasonic cutter to cut open the LEDs. Hot knife to melt the two pieces back up together and to do some modifications on the inside housing itself. Phillips head screwdriver. I'm probably going to use an impact because it makes it quicker. Goop for some added security on the mods that we're going to do. Black silicone to make the taillights completely waterproof at the end. First thing we need to do is get this taillight open. Protect the lens, I go ahead and put some shrink wrap on it, some cling wrap. Before we start cutting, I wanted to give you a quick outline of where we are actually going to make the cut. We're gonna cut right in this natural fold line, almost all the way around on both sides until you get to this fin. You're gonna go up this natural fold line as much as you can, and then you're gonna cut up through here and around. Now where it gets a little tricky is right down here with this bolt. You need to go on the lens side of that bolt. You can't cut up here in this little trough. You need to cut below that bolt and then the housing will come out. There's a few more things that are gonna hold us up, but I'll show you that once we get it cut open a little. Okay, to get the rest of the housing out, I am going to slightly trim this plastic here. It's always really hard to tell if you were cutting on the outside of the housing or the inside of the housing. Unfortunately, it was slightly on the inside, so we'll have to trim that a little bit more. Probably gonna do that all the way down here and a little bit around this way just to make sure that we can get everything out, especially like right there. And then, before we do anything else, we will have to trim this. Kind of hard to tell on camera, but this red tab is aimed down at this housing here, which means it is going to hold in place until we can trim that off. So we need to unbolt this specific piece. This is like the brake light, parking light housing. Then we will start trimming that off with a hot knife, and then we can get this whole piece out. This is definitely not the easiest housing to remove just because of how tightly packed it is in there, but it's also not the worst one I've done. Now, you can see here that this housing is chrome, and that's just not gonna work. I normally throw this whole thing into this Zep bucket, but I tried oven cleaner recently and it goes so much faster. Just a nice foam Look over here. It's already stripped some of the chrome off. Very, very quick. The housing is completely stripped of the chrome and is now just the raw black plastic. We can now start to install the boards. The reverse and turn signal board is a really straightforward install. It's just gonna go in like that, and we're gonna feed the wires through the bulb socket holes back there. The parking and brake light board is a little bit more complicated for two reasons. One, it's diffused, so we will need to actually modify the back housing to have some red LEDs that are going to light this whole thing up. And another reason why it's extra complicated is because of this. I think whenever Alumisthetic made this specific board, they designed it based off of the LED, the OEM LED taillight housings. I have yet to see a set of the LED ones in person, so I don't know this for a fact, but if you look at pictures of them, it looks like this piece right here is missing, and it has LEDs that run all the way out to this corner, this edge right here. So I think that they designed this board to fit into the LED housings, but that's okay because they do leave this nice, really defined edge all the way around, which means we can cut it with no issues. Otherwise, we would be trying to mark it somehow and then cut it out by just holding the board up against the housing itself. Thankfully, we don't have to do that. Now, I did learn a lesson from the other side that I already built, and that lesson was to wait to install the bottom board. Seems kind of obvious, but I installed the bottom board and then realized I had to cut this section out, which made it extra difficult to cut out because this thing was still slipping and sliding everywhere while the adhesive cured. There we go, got it completely trimmed up. Let's do a quick test fit to make sure that it will fit right in there. Looks good. Now we can go ahead and get this one installed, and we'll get this one set in place as well. Both boards are completely installed and cured. So what we need to do now is install the LEDs for the diffused light portion. And the way that we do that is we cut up the provided plastic and install it on the back housing. To do this, I lay out the plastic on the diffused piece that I'm trying to install the LEDs on, and then I will literally just make a quick mark and we'll cut that out. I cut it out just a little bit bigger than what this is right here, so however big this is, just slightly bigger than that. To figure out where we're gonna put this piece of plastic, the diffused piece, we need to just kind of have this mocked up in here. If we're looking dead on at the panel, we need to make sure that this is sitting right about here so that the LEDs will shine directly onto the diffuser, which is gonna sit right along like this. To install this piece, we are going to plastic weld it in place. Done the top one, now we just need to do the other ones in the exact same manner, and then we're gonna put some, we'll put some goop on it just to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere as this. While that cures up, we can go ahead and get the strips ready. So what I did for the other side is I double stacked the red LEDs, but I also made sure to offset the strips. For these strips that Alumisthetic provides you, we have these solder pads. These are also the cut lines. You can actually see the scissor icon right there. We will cut right there on the line where we need to. So in this case, it's gonna be that one. We're gonna get 2 of these cut, and then we will stick them and solder them in place. This is what I mean by we stagger the LEDs. We have one over here, then the strip on top is just slightly off from that. I do that just so that I can minimize the amount of dots that could shine through the diffusion. Thankfully, there's enough space in this taillight to actually be able to do that. There's a lot of taillights that get the diffusion look that you don't have that option, but this one we're good. There we go, nice and smooth all the way around. I love that it lights up these LEDs right here as well. These are not on yet. These actually light up much brighter for the brake light. So I love that it gives it that look of the parking light being on, and then the brake light will be a lot brighter. But if you notice, one major negative thing is the light bleed along the edges of this panel. They are pretty gnarly. Obviously you can see that that's gonna be covered up with the rest of the housing. Don't worry about that. But I'm talking about specifically between the inner housing and our new custom LED panel. This needs to be covered up. Fill in the gaps that the panel just can't quite fill in on this housing. We are going to use some foam tape. This is just some very generic foam tape. I think I bought it at AutoZone, but you can buy it on Amazon as well. So we are just going to cut this up several different ways. We're going to cut it shorter this way, and then we are going to make it thinner to fit in between the housing and the LED panel to cover all of these gaps. There we go, that is so much better. The little glow you're seeing is from behind, but we've got it all sealed off along the entire edge here, just so that the glow will come from the diffused pieces and the LEDs themselves. Inner housing is totally built out. We are ready to go back into the lens, but of course we do need to make sure that it is perfectly clean on the inside. I do have an air compressor, but I think it's too loud. It just runs all the time. So I use just a leaf blower, and it cleans out the lenses and cleans off the inner housing just fine. We can do some quick testing. Got the turn signal, reverse light, parking light, and brake light. The taillight is now fully back together. We have completely plastic welded the whole thing on the back, as you saw. Now we can actually seal it up so that it is completely waterproof with our black silicone. Full plug and play LED taillights for the Veloster. I think this kit looked really cool. This customer actually chose to switch this out to Diffused. So this is actually the first set of Diffused Veloster tails that have been built, and it looks pretty sick. Still can't get over this curve that this panel had. That is crazy how curved it is, but it still works out and it does look good. It flows with the whole light assembly.